the grapes. Check this out.
Hello and welcome back to the Youth Group Reunion Tour podcast, the podcast that unpacks the Christian cultural touchstones you grew up with in the 90s and 2000s. And I'm your host, Mikey B.
And I'm your other host. My name is Jared. So we've got a pretty exciting episode today, Mike. I've been looking forward to it for sure.
You know, there's been a severe lack of emo and screamo, which was a big part of the 90s and 2000s. And so far in this podcast, we've done exactly zero emo and screamo.
It was like most of what I listened to in high school for like the vast majority of the time. So the fact that we haven't touched on it yet is, a glaring lack in our catalog of episodes.
Absolutely. And it's now making a comeback, right? You have everybody trying to do it. You have this big emo festival happening in October. I mean, it's serious business. And I think it's the perfect time to talk about it, to be honest with you.
Yes, and we also have a very exciting guest today, a guest who's been referenced and mentioned several times on the podcast, I'm sure. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and introduce him. So this is my best friend, the often mentioned Travis, is our guest today. Travis, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Travis. Very flattered to be on the show. You might remember me from mine and Jared's old video gaming YouTube channel, which was extremely popular. So if you recognize the voice, that's all.
Probably about as many views as our podcast. Well, maybe on a good day.
Did you ever do any content on that page?
Mike might have ran some plays up for us on one or two videos, but we did it. We probably made like 20 episodes maybe, and then we kind of just, things got too busy or we just weren't able to fell out of doing it. But, so hopefully that's not going to happen with the podcast. Hopefully we've got many more episodes ahead of us. But Trav, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have Travis has an expert witness here on our topic today, which is, Travis, I believe, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I believe this is your favorite band, or was at one point in time. Can you confirm that is the case?
Yes, it was one of the two. The other was The Devil Wears Prada at the time. But I definitely think Underoath still holds that creative power that a lot of other bands of that genre just can't really match or step up to in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's the topic, by the way. I just wanted to make sure we introduce it for those of you who don't have titles on your screen right now. This episode is about Underoath. That's the connection there.
And a brief introduction for anyone that doesn't know, Underoath is a hardcore Christian screamo band from the 2000s, and they are recently reformed and producing new music. Mike, didn't you go to see Underoath in concert?
Or you had tickets? Multiple times. Yeah, I saw them more recently. When I say more recently, I mean like in the past 3 or 4 years. They played with Killswitch Engage, and it was like kind of like during that weird breakup process where everybody was different. I don't think Aaron Gillespie was in the band at the time, so it was like super weird, I believe. I just remember like the lineup was super different, and then I had seen him previously. I can't remember if he was there or not. I just remember the lineup being unusual. And
I know if it was in 2018 or after, then it would have had at that point Aaron Gillespie had rejoined the band. Mm-hmm. So if you saw them at any point from 2018 and after, then he was there.
Okay, maybe it was Spencer who wasn't there. It seemed like a weird lineup, and that's what I remember from that. And then I had seen them previously at like a smaller show, I believe, where they were either the headliner or one of the few bands that were there together. But
before we get too deep into the weeds, Travis, do you want to tell us like a little bit about your history with Underoath? Like, you picked this episode topic. You were like, hey, I'd like to do an episode about Underoath. Mm-hmm. Give us your history with them. Like, why do you like them? How'd you find out about them?
So I actually heard my first Underoath song when I was in 9th grade, and it was from their Only Chasing Safety and the song was called "A Boy Brush Red." And it was actually on a burnt CD that my buddy had gave me, and I had no idea who it was. I just remembered I loved the song, and I listened to it over and over. And my parents were extremely strict on like computers and stuff like that for obvious reasons, but just to keep me and my younger siblings safe from like whatever we could have gotten into accidentally or whatever at the time.
Neopet chat rooms.
Yeah. So like I didn't have
hijacking the Jonas Brothers.
Yeah. Like I didn't have LimeWire. Like my parents wouldn't even let me have an iPod. They thought MySpace was going to steal their credit info. So I wasn't allowed to do anything on the computer really, except maybe Disney.com on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so basically I had to wait for God's good graces to where I'd be at someone's house and they'd have an actual CD that they were playing, and they'd play a song that I'd recognize, and I'd be like, who is that? I have that on a burnt CD. So like months later, I found out it was Underoath and went down this rabbit hole all the way back to like their first albums, like Active Depression. I think Changing of Times was one, and stuff like that. And then,
You've heard everything. So you've heard like the whole. Have you kept up with any of their new stuff at all, or?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously they kind of blew up on the radar when everyone was like, "Did you hear they said this word on their new album or whatever?" And it kind of put them back on the radar. But still, just like from their first album, I think that they're enormous trendsetters in that genre. And they just go to show that you, like in a hardcore band, you don't need to just chug the crap out of everything in order to make it heavy and good. Like they do a lot of octave harmonies, like in all their choruses and stuff like that. They do a lot of just a lot of poetic stuff where even if there wasn't words, it would still be real poetic. And I think that that's a big deal in music, is it can make you feel certain ways without just being completely aggressive 100% of the time. And that's what's always drawn me to them.
I think that they, especially on that album, on They're Only Chasing Safety, I think that they found a really great mix of like the screaming hardcore aspect of it, and then also like the melodies and the actual singing, and like the other, like the more chill part of their music. Like it was a really that was like what was really interesting to me when I heard them, and I was like, okay, this isn't like Demon Hunter where it's screaming all the time, or like Norma Jean. It's like it's there's like parts of it, but then there's also a chorus where he comes in, and I was like, I can understand the words that he's saying. I know what he's actually saying here. It's not just
I want to react to something you said, Travis. You mentioned that your parents were paranoid about using the computer. My parents were probably the same way. I just found better ways to get around whatever.
You're very computers.
Yeah.
I mean, school run my MySpace, so.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, just because it's kind of funny. My wife Leanne, she kind of grew up with a similar background where her parents had no idea they had MySpaces, so it was like this really edgy thing to have an AOL Instant Messenger and a MySpace. But the pros of that is you got exposed to a lot of really interesting music, and so my first interaction with Underoath was this whole emo screamo thing was starting to be a trend, right? There was, some bands that came out and I thought it was kind of a joke, right? I was always interested in what's the weirdest song out there and like what's the craziest trend that's kind of a bop but also kind of dumb. And at the time, I remember Hawthorne Heights was a band that was very fun to make fun of. And so in my quest to continue to make fun of bands like Hawthorne Heights, I was just going through purevolume.com, if you remember that site. It was like
one of my
amazing site.
On that still.
Dude, it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. They took it down and turned it into like a celebrity blog. So all all your good stuff is gone, unfortunately. But Pure Volume, if you don't know about it, it was like the site. I think that when people talk about MySpace and the glory days of whatever, I think that MySpace definitely was a big part of it. But for me personally, it was Pure Volume because it was all music. And they offered free songs to download, right? So that's how I came across Underoath. They, for whatever reason, I think they were like the Pure Volume band of the day, right? On the front page, you have the headline, you have all this stuff there with the image. And I was like, okay, these guys look kind of funny. They look like Hawthorne Heights. Like there's like 100 people in this band. And they had 2 songs for free, Reinventing Your Exit, and then It's Dangerous Business Walking Out Your Front Door. And I listened to It's Dangerous Business first, and that song was pretty intense, right? It's like, I'm drowning in my sleep song. I was like, here's another emo song about dying in a car crash or something, right? Like, this is so over the top and, like, unlistenable, right? I kind of, listened to it to make fun of it, and then I heard Reinventing Your Exit, and I was like, oh, there's, like, a mostly singing and then a little bit of screaming, but it was just enough so it didn't like instantly like turn me off and say like, all right, this is just too much. This is too harsh, right? Like you kind of alluded to where, there's a lot of melody in it. It was not a lot of like, Norma Jean riffage and stuff like that, where it's just like, these guys are a joke, right? These words don't make any sense, but it was really cool how they put it together. And I guess from then on, I started listening to them kind of ironically, but then I actually grew to like them. And I guess I really knew that there was something special about this band. When one of my friends, his name is Isaac, he had come to our youth group a couple times, but he went to a different church. And, he was always like into sports and soccer and stuff like that. And he came to youth group one day and he said, dude, you got to check out this band called Underoath. And I was like, dude, I know. Like, I've listened to Underoath. It's pretty good. And he's like, dude, they're amazing. And then, after then he turned, more emo than me. But, like, it was just one of those memories that, like, I knew that, if the high school soccer team can be, obsessed with this album that sounds like this is really something special here that, the average person can pick up and like people you wouldn't expect would listen to it and like it. And that's what I thought was cool.
I think for me, the thing that kind of showed me like, oh, there's something special about this band, and they're not just like a church band, even though they're a Christian band, is that I would see people like at school that I didn't know that like didn't go to my church, and they had an Underoath shirt on. I think it was like the album cover of like the person with like the oxygen mask on, which like to me that album cover is like super iconic for me. Like I just always remember that just stood out to me, like that image of that person, and maybe it was just because I saw these people with these shirts or whatever, and I was like, oh, this this band's getting some like, wide coverage, like not just church people have heard about this band. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember after I got into them, because whenever you get a new favorite band, you obsess over them and you look up every YouTube video. Yes. And like back in the early 2000s, especially, like I was in a band at the time. Mike, I'm sure you were in a band. And like the thing was like you upload a video of your band doing all the stupid stuff they do, and then you montage it together with little funny parts and music, and you're like, studio update. And there's maybe like 10 seconds of someone being like, yeah, we're recording this right now, and that's what it is. And then it's like fixing the van tire on the side of the road, and like, oh, here's a cool shot from our show that looks packed out because like for some reason 10 people were in the building at the time. And I remember like just watching all their videos like that and everything that Aaron Gillespie had to say. And I mean, obviously he's like probably the most famous one in the band. I mean, obviously,
I think
usually the vocalists are, but
person.
Yeah. And I know Dallas went to, what was it, Maylene and the Sons of Disaster like years ago. And then they got Chamberlain, and he's really good. I definitely love his singing to screaming ratios. Like he's very good at switching. And but yeah, Aaron Gillespie, he started the Almost, and he had that project
so
going, and that was very successful.
in the
And I mean, every video that he had, I was obsessed with.
In the process of like doing our research and listening to going back and listening to some of the albums, I had finished one of the albums, and Spotify just started playing another one, and they played the Almost, and I was like, oh, I forgot that he had this side project. I really liked this song. It was Say This Sooner. And I listened to it. I was like, I really liked that song. I listened to it again. I still really liked it. I guess one of the things that we should say for some of the people that maybe aren't as familiar with Underoath is that Underoath has 2 singers. So they have a guy who screams, and then I think it's, correct me, Mike and Travis, since you know, is it called the clean vocalist?
Yeah,
that's
right? Yeah, that's an accepted term.
So, and that is Aaron Gillespie is the clean vocalist, and Spencer Chamberlain is the one that does the screaming. And Aaron Gillespie, I think, is a really interesting person. Just kind of like well, first of all, I think it's really interesting that he is the drummer, because there's not a lot of bands where the drummer sings, which I think is partially because drumming itself is so like physically intense, more so than any of the other instruments. I would say that, like, to some extent, I imagine it would, get you out of breath. And then in addition to trying to sing while you're doing all this stuff, I imagine it's, super difficult. Trav, you played the drums. You ever, I know you sing with your guitar, but you ever sang and played the drums before?
Yeah. I mean, after, like, it wasn't something that I typically did, but, after like Aaron Gillespie, like I had to do it, like, and then and that's why I'm saying, like, he was just a trendsetter, because it was like, man, now I got to play guitar or play drums and sing at the same time, because he looks so good when he does it. And then it's like, oh man, he plays acoustic too. He's kind of emotional. I got to be more emotional. And it was like just kind of one of those things. As like a teenager, you kind of aspire to be the guy that he's just like the cool guy. And I mean, even other bands like Five, their drummer sang and drummed at the same time. But kind of like whenever you see that, it's like, oh, well, so-and-so did it first already. So it's still cool, but it's like not as cool, I guess.
Would you say that Aaron Gillespie was like a big influence on you musically when you were in high school?
Yeah, because, kind of like I was saying, like, they were a band that was very melodic and poetic a lot of the time, and it wasn't just breakdowns 24/7. He was a drummer that was in a metal band.
Heroes from Florida.
Yep. And
Travis grew up in Florida, right where the home of Underoath.
Yep. And a
Where America goes to die.
Yeah. But
that was one of their shirts.
Yeah. But yeah, the one of the coolest things about Aaron Gillespie was he didn't double pedal the whole time either. Like, he was very good at using his hi-hat and a single kicker, which at that time in my life, like my first 6 years of drumming, I only did single pedal. But once I got the double pedal, it was almost like I couldn't play without it. I was very dependent on it to do fills and to just kind of go along with the heavy genre that I usually played with. And just the fact that he could be in like a metal band and he didn't have to just double kick his way out of everything. It made him way more creative. And I think there's actually a video on YouTube. I'm sure it's still there, but somebody asked him like what he thought his playing style was like. And he's like, if you could pick out like the best trash ever, that's what it would be. Because like his playing style, it's very just like, some of it is just like grungy, but it's just so good. And I like I keep saying, I think he just set a lot of trends that way. And yeah, I mean, you guys know Jeff too. He was always one drummer that impressed me with the single foot too, because he's a phenomenal drummer. And it always surprised me when somebody didn't have to depend on the double kick in today's day and age, because it was something that I gravitated toward very quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned like the trend setting part of this, right? And I don't know, arguably, I mean, here's my argument. I think Underoath is the most influential Christian band that was, kind of along that spectrum of like the Switchfoot style, where like, are they or aren't they?
Yeah.
Switchfoot was a band who was big and had mainstream success that was Christian, but I think Underoath was actually more influential in the culture, just because I really feel like people, just like musically and style wise, like the skinny jeans with the carabiner and the long hair, like that like became cool at the same time, and it was Underoath doing it first, rather than a lot of these bands that, you know, were Christian bands that were kind of copying whatever was popularized by another band. It's like they did it first. Everyone wanted to be like Underoath. Oh, bonus, and they're Christian. So it's like, hey, that's super cool. All these people, all of my friends already listened to Underoath already. So it's just like, just the next thing to say, like, hey, come to this concert at this church and Underoath is playing, right? Like, it was just an amazing time, really, to think about it in terms of like the youth group world, because it was just so easy to get people to come to shows of that genre around that subculture at the church. I mean, we had a church battle of the bands at Northmar. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but you know, that was like a thing.
So listen to this story that happens at this battle of the band. So it's mostly, like you said, hardcore-ish bands that are kind of playing there. And so obviously a mosh pit starts up, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm standing at the edge of it, and I'm just I'm like, I'm not gonna get in there, but I'm gonna, you know, stand at the edge and kind of watch what happens. And some little emo kid runs up and punches me in the face.
You told me about this.
And saying that he punched me is being very generous to him. A more accurate description of what happened is that he put his hand into a fist, put it against my jaw, and then moved my head to the side. It was basically that he like turned my head with his fist. It didn't hurt at all, and as it happened, I was just like, what? I was like, did that just happen? Did that kid just punch me in the face? And I took a look at him, and he was, you know, what you would expect an emo kid to look like at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, there's no need to end this kid's career. I'll just let him go.
I like to think that his friends amped him up. They were like, yo, punch the biggest dude in this room right now. You won't do it.
It's just like prison. It's like the prison rule. It's just like, find the biggest guy.
The biggest dude in the mosh pit and punch him.
So again, this was in the youth room, right? Like you should not be picturing the House of Blues or, you know, something like that. This is not Madison Square Gardens. This was like the youth room, formerly the sanctuary, right? With like a baptismal font in the background and a big cross, right? Like, you know, it's just kind of hilarious considering the background, I guess, of where this is happening. So when we say mosh pit, you know, if you're picturing like an old
circle, it was a circle that people were standing in a circle, and it wasn't like the crowd was thick. There was maybe 30, 40 people there, maybe. Yeah. And most of them were in a circle. There was like, you know, maybe I'll say maybe 10 people in this mosh pit, and I was watching it happen, and this kid comes up and pushes my head with his fist.
Yeah. Steve's trying to crack a kill and see 10 people. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I have one more quick story about that before we get back to talking about Underoath. The second thing that I remember from that same Battle of the Bands, we only did it once, by the way, probably because people are getting punched too much, but
it didn't bother me.
there was a post-rock band, which was the style at the time. If you remember bands like Cia Roche and stuff like that, right? Or Sigur Rós, I don't know how you say it. No one knew.
Is this the band from my school?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I suppose I can say their name, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think they're called Antidote. It was the name.
Oh no! I was thinking wasn't it La Veritas?
Yes, they changed their name. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. La Veritas.
as local bands are wont to do, they just change their name
every
randomly.
Show. It's their show. Name every show.
So anyways, they asked if they can be on this Battle of the Bands, and I said sure. And I said, well, everyone can only play 3 songs, and they said okay. Well, as post-rock bands are known for, apparently I learned. The post-rock songs were like 12 minutes long. They're very, very instrumental tracks, right? So there are 3, like everyone else's 3 songs were like 15 minutes. and then Laverte gets up, and they just like go straight into like their whole set. That's like 36 minutes long. That's technically 3 songs, but 12 minutes apiece. I remember Pete, Pete, he was sitting in a chair and he like was nodding off and falling asleep just because like he sat down and they're instrumental and he was like literally falling asleep. So it was like a pop punk band, which was my band. There's a metal band who's, kind of influenced by that kind of thing. They're called Leviathan. And then this band, Laverte, which was doing the post-rock thing that just, exactly.
The other thing that I remember happening is that one of the kids took the guitar off, laid it down on the ground, and then got down on his hands and knees and yelled at it. Just yelled at the guitar, just like screamed at it on the ground. Mike, what was he trying to do there? As a musician, you saw it happen. Do you know what he's trying
to do? So actually, connecting this to episode 15, John Foreman at Live in San Diego does this to his guitar. Caleb, fact check me on that one. I'm pretty sure it, but if you can actually like pick up some of your things because your pickups on your guitar are just magnets or whatever. So the idea is like voice makes like a weird ambient sound. If like you turn the gain up far enough and you scream into it, you can kind of get this like interesting texture, I guess, because they were kind of into that, right? There were bands like we're kind of talking about local bands now, Travis, but there's a very not famous local band. My first show ever, they brought out a bicycle tire and a violin bow. I don't know if you were there, Jared. Yeah, you were definitely there. You just probably remember. But it was like 2 kids, and it was just like a bicycle tire, and they squeaked the bicycle tire with the violin bow, and the other person had some sort of horn, like a French horn or trombone or something. So it was just, we were in a small town, right? It wasn't exactly, the local scene of LA or something like that.
Yeah.
It was going back to our earlier point, though. It was like a time when.
That's why Warren, Ohio isn't, that's why Dave Grohl left Warren, Ohio for Seattle.
Yeah. He's from Warren?
Yeah, he's from Warren.
So that's kind of like
Avenue is in Warren, and it's got like a big pair of drumsticks there, and he was there for the dedication, and yeah.
Wow. It's kind of like a big joke, though. I feel like we should be embarrassed that like we try so hard to say like, oh yeah, someone famous was born here. It's like he was there, doesn't remember any of it. It's not like he grew up there and has like fond memories. He's like literally an infant, right? Has no memory, but like there's an entire mural dedicated to him, and he plays concerts there sometimes to be nice. But like for me, the equivalent of like Mikey B. Alley would be like, some random town in Illinois, I was there on a work trip. I was in Crystal Lake for a work trip, and then Crystal Lake has Mikey B. Alley, and it's like, hey, thanks guys, but I had a layover here.
Warren, Ohio was foundational.
That's right.
Developing the sound of Nirvana and the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, that's true. So I don't know. Anyways, it was a cool time. Did you ever open up for Underoath, Travis, with like any of the bands? I'm just curious if like, they did any of the local band circuit stuff with you guys.
No, but after I quit the band, they opened up for another band called Oceana, which you may or may not know. But
I do.
Yeah, our Screamer's girlfriend was rich at the time and paid them like $2,000 for them to headline one of our shows at this place called The Bridge. But I think that's really the only claim to fame, aside from when I lived in Ohio and I was doing like my acoustic thing and I opened for Leland that one time.
Sweet.
But other than that, nothing really. Yeah, the band that I was in, because all through middle school, I was actually obsessed with the 80s, like so much so to where there's not like an 80s song that I can't like whistle the solo along with it, like every time it's on the radio, like so much. I've got endless videos of me singing like love ballads at karaoke. All through middle school, that's what we did. And then in high school, I became the drummer of this hardcore band called Zombie Eats Kid. That's what was on Pure Volume. And then we changed our name to Challenging Aries when the Screamer and one of our guitarists left. Then I left and they changed it to Aphia, and I joined a band called These Three Remain, which that's part of a Bible verse, obviously. And yeah, after that, I was kind of, down in Florida, Southwest hardcore was a huge scene. Like, honestly, if you look up Southwest hardcore on Google, like so much stuff will come up because there's actually a really cool scene. And I mean, there's something to be said for kids that are going to wear like skin tight black clothing in the blazing Florida sun. I think that's impressive. But
yeah.
I mean,
Trav, check this out.
Yeah.
Mike was in another band, and it was called Break Out the Shotguns. How do you feel about that name?
I think that's a sick name. One name
especially
at that time frame, like if you would have picked up some torn up, crinkled up in the pocket flyer, it was like headline tonight, Break Out the Shotguns. I would have been like,
I had a Break Out the Shotguns t-shirt. If we could have got Zombie Eats Kid and Break Out the Shotguns to play a show together, heck of a lineup.
That would have been amazing. So we didn't open up for anyone that was like crazy good, but like probably memorable to people in the scene. I don't know if anyone remembers Attack anymore.
Yes.
If you remember the Crabcore, that was the thing. Jared, are you familiar with Crabcore?
I'm familiar with the music video where the guy is on the ground doing.
That's actually the first music video for Stick Stickly. They came out with a new music video for it eventually.
Yeah.
Isn't Stick Stickly the name of that thing from Nickelodeon?
Yes, it was. It was like a trend to kind of like have that 90s throwback, right? It was a cultural touchstone from the 90s that was in a lot of the 2000s hardcore stuff. So I know Devil Wears Prada would do that too a little bit, right? They had the Reptar, King of the Ozone,
Reptar, like Ozone or whatever. We did the same thing. We had like one song called The Long Road to Isengard. Ours was more have titles that don't make sense. We had another one called Your Nickel Ain't Worth My Dime or something, like just stupid crap. It was so cool. And like, we thought we were the coolest.
That was the style at the time, though. But now, Underoath, they didn't really do titles like that, right? I mean, I find their music to be, like, lyrically and title-wise, to be pretty poetic. It really is kind of hard to figure out what's happening until you, like, really pull it apart. Like, A Boy Brushed Red, Living in Black and White. Like, I kind of get, like, the themes of the song, but if you just told someone that title, it's like, hey, that sounds kind of emo, but I don't know what it is.
It sounds like a Fall Out Boy light. Like it's like, you know, if it was a Fall Out Boy song, they would have taken that title to the next level, but they were like halfway in between having a normal song title and having like, you know, half of a paragraph, because they have, you know, other ones that are like, it's dangerous business walking out your front door, and
they've got. I got
one
like I got 10 friends and a shotgun that says you won't do jack.
Oh yeah,
I think that's the title.
Yeah, that was a good one.
One of their coolest songs, I think, was "Some Will Seek Forgiveness," and So that one actually has Aaron Marsh from Copeland in it. So that's Aaron Marsh and Aaron Gillespie singing that one, and I remember that was one of the coolest songs. Because it was like very emotional in the beginning and about salvation and stuff, and then at the end he screams and stuff, and it was like one of the biggest endings.
Is that the one where he screams, "Jesus, I'm ready to come home"?
That's it. That's the one. Last track, acoustic.
Yep.
So let's start getting into it. So we specifically are going to focus on They're Only Chasing Safety and Define the Great Line, which were their two most commercially successful albums. They were both certified gold, and I believe, if Wikipedia is to be believed, that Define the Great Line actually peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it was the highest charting Christian album since 1997.
Wow.
Mike, any guess what the one from 97 was? We did.
Michael W. Shoot, it was the Sixpence, None the Richer.
Yeah, Sixpence, None the Richer. The lost,
Really?
the lost episode that we did on Sixpence, None the Richer. Yeah. So, so I mean, Underoath was definitely commercially successful, like in the mainstream, because I mean, like I said, they had 2 gold albums, and when we were looking through this, right? So we're looking at on Spotify at the top played songs. Travis, if you had to guess, what do you think? Which of their songs do you think has the most plays on Spotify?
Writing on the Walls.
Really? Okay. So Writing on the Walls, I think, is
number 2.
Let me check. Yeah.
All right. Well, the number
So
one would be
has 33.5 million is Writing on the Walls.
Number 1. All right. I have 2 for number 1. It would either be In Regards to Myself or You're Ever So Inviting.
No, it's neither
wow.
of those. So the one so Mike and I both thought it was Reinventing Your Exit. We both were like positive, like that was the big song when we were in high school. That was the one that was played all the time. We were positive that was it. It's actually the first song you ever heard by them, A Boy Brushed Red, Living in Black and White.
Oh.
And so Mike and I did a little bit of digging while we were prepping for the episode to try and figure out, like, that song was never released as a single. It doesn't have a music video. How did it get all these plays? Well, apparently it was featured on an episode of the OC, and that is why it has the most plays. So it was on season 3, episode 12 of the OC. The episode is called The Sister Act.
Interesting. That's so crazy to me that Underoath would be on a show like that, right? It just kind of shows you that, like, this like a cosmic shift in, like, the sound, because most of the OC soundtracks are pretty indie, and I think they're still great soundtracks. They had bands like Rooney and, stuff like that I still like to this day, but it's just interesting that, like, it was like this crossover of, like, hey, this is a great song. We gotta play this song because the kids really think it's cool.
Yeah. It had to have applied to the drama in that episode or something.
Sure.
Yeah. Travis, Mike, thinking about They're Only Chasing Safety. I'm looking at that iconic album cover right now with the woman with the oxygen mask on her face. Are there any songs in particular that stand out to you as, like, you really love them for some reason, or, they really stuck with you for a long time, or, Travis, you already shared a little bit that the first time you heard it, it really was like, struck a chord with you, but any other songs on that album?
I mean, myself, I pretty much know this album front to back. Like, I listened to it all the time. Let me see. Yeah,
so
dangerous.
As you're thinking,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, as you're thinking, I listened to it again last night, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, like every song on this album is good. Like I liked all of them when I re-listened to it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single one that, like, they all hit the same. It was like I was in high school and they were still sounded as good to me now as they did then. And I mean, my personal favorite, I think, is, I really like Reinventing Your Exit. I think there's a reason why it was their single. I liked it a lot. I really like Young and Aspiring. I like A Boy Brushed Red, Living in Black and White. And then I also really liked Down, Set, Go.
Okay, yeah.
That was gonna be my sleeper pick. So, like, like you said, Jared, I remember, like, I don't actually remember this album being that good because, well, not that I don't remember it being good. It's just like I collected this album piecemeal, right? So, like, I got songs from Pure Volume, and then, like Travis was saying, you go over to a friend's house and they had, I think one of my friends had It's Dangerous Business, Walking Out Your Front Door, or whatever, or A Boy Brushed Red. Yeah. And so they'd offer free downloads, and then you download them, and then you have like 4 songs. So I think I, like, downloaded for free probably 5 or 6 of these songs. And re-listening to this, I listened to this at the gym today. It's pretty short. It's 35 minutes. It's really not that long of an album.
10 songs. It's 10 songs. It's really short. It's
and one of them's like an interlude, right? So like you cross that off the list. But
it's only 50 seconds, less than a minute.
They all have that.
Yeah. But at the same time, songs that I didn't remember that well or like I had forgotten about, Down Set Go is one of those songs that I like listened to again. I was like, oh, wow, that's actually really good. And actually the first track too, Young and Aspiring, that's a song that doesn't really get talked about very much, but I feel like it's really good and kind of is a good introduction to something that like, they just did cool stuff with their chords. I don't know the technical names for a lot of these things, but when I think about how I learned how to play guitar, like a lot of the things that they do, if you're a guitarist, like on the high E string, how they're like those like dissonant types of chords. I don't know specifically what the name is for them. Yeah, like those things where it's like I'm going to sing it like on, They're Only Chasing Safety. It's like that. Like those kind of riffs. I still call them in my head like Underoath type of riffs because, there were a lot of bands that did very similar things and it sounded really cool. But, that was like my first time saying, oh, you can do that. That's pretty sweet. Like that's a new style.
Yep.
So I think front to back, though, I think this album is pretty solid, and it still holds up to this day. I mean, arguably better than what I remembered going. So I think that if I had to give an album to someone to like introduce them to Underoath, I think it was the perfect path that we followed. That if you listen to like some of the older stuff, like you did, Travis, where like if you would have started off with like the really heavy, almost sludgy type of stuff, from the early days, it was like metal, whereas like this was. I think a good place for people to pick up and then kind of spider out from the discography from there. Would you agree?
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because earlier you brought up Kill Switch Engage, and they've been around a lot longer than people even realize because a lot of people didn't even notice them until they had the song My Curse. But a lot of people didn't know that Andy had done recording with Underoath. He did recording with Prada. And they actually started in the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And they had the End of Heartache. And that album, I mean, when you really listen to stuff like that, like you kind of realize that those guys were kind of the pioneers into the screamo age. So screamo wasn't always this girly thing as like tough guys used to call it. They used to be like, oh, that's too emo or whatever. But it was really a thing that like morphed. It came from like a base plate of like 80s metal that kind of took on a grunge and like this 90s effect, and they kind of put them both together, and it was like this new screamo thing that started way earlier. And I mean, people don't really notice that. And then like you were saying, like the skinny jeans and stuff like that, even when you watch Underoath's first music videos and stuff, like they're all just dressing like regular 90s dudes, like nothing skin tight, nothing skinny.
Yeah.
And so it's like you really, like you said, like you can really just see that they paved that way and kind of made the genre their own.
Yeah, they were a good starting point for me. You mentioned Adam Duckowitz from Kill Switch. You mentioned some of the videos and stuff like that. Yeah, presumably you're talking about like the 777 DVD. And so for me, that was like a really cool DVD to kind of watch their process of them, playing shows, going to festivals. Like, they talk pretty openly about their faith and things like that. But that's also like helped me spider out into the larger, more metal sphere where previously I'd kind of written it off as like, okay, whatever. I like Metallica, but, not that much. But it was like, oh, here's Kill Switch Engage, and then you can kind of spider off from there. But there's so many connections, right? So like Adam Duckowitz actually produced their next album, which we're going to talk about now, which was Define the Great Line. He actually produced it, and I think had a bigger like influence, I guess, on part of that sound, in my opinion, just because it was way more metal than They're Only Chasing Safety.
Yeah. And the big song from this album, as Travis alluded to, is called Writing on the Walls.
Yeah, earlier when you asked that question, I thought that you were talking about both albums, not just all of their songs. So I apologize.
Sorry. Yeah, I meant just on their highest on Spotify.
Yeah.
It's the OC one. So Trav, what do you think about this album? Is there anything that stands out? Any songs
Yeah,
that you
so
love?
this one, I remember when he was my best friend at the time. His name was Steve, and me and him were actually in the youth band together. And he bought this album, and I remember we popped it in. He had a Dodge Neon SRT4, which we thought was the coolest car ever. But he had a 6 sound system in it, and whenever we would pull into the church parking lot, we would blast the Christian metal because it was like you literally couldn't get any cooler, and it was always this album. And right from the first song, it starts off and it sounds like a film reel going, and that just, I don't know, there was just something so cool about that to me. And then it comes in with that riff, and it was kind of like watching the band mature in a way, even though I was still just, a punk kid, 16-year-old. It was just kind of like, man, they sound so like grown up now, and the way that they play it wasn't just like there was no angst. It was just art in a lot of ways. And, the song Writing on the Walls, I remember everyone in the youth group, especially kids who like weren't musicians. They weren't really like metalheads or anything, but they would talk about this video because it had gotten on, I think it was MTV2 at the time.
Yeah. It was on Fuse and stuff like that too.
Yeah. And everyone was like, dude, did you see Underoath's new video? It's so dark. And like, it was just the most, I don't know, for some reason, it was like the most insane thing. And people were like, aren't they a Christian band? And it's like, yeah. And it was kind of one of those things where for the first time, I feel like from other youth kids, a Christian metal band was kind of starting to be put under the microscope. And I mean, not that it was the first time that it had ever happened. I just think this was like kind of a turning point where people started using the terms, well, it's not a Christian band, it's Christians in a band. And I remember that became like, oh my gosh, that I heard that phrase so many times throughout high school, like in the youth groups and stuff. And it was kind of a, like, youth leader says like, well, you got to be careful what you're letting in. And it's like, well, I just like the music. It's like, well, you're subconsciously hearing the words too. And like stuff like that. And, how they are. And, but yeah, this album's completely iconic to me, because I think it was a huge stepping stone in the way that they play now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll say is, when I re-listened to this last night, unpopular opinion, I did not like it. I did not I liked Writing on the Walls because it sounded the most like their previous album to me. Mm-hmm. The rest of it, I don't know. Just when I was listening to it, at some point I was like, oh, maybe I don't like Underoath. Maybe I only like that one album.
Yeah.
But I think that, it's probably worth me going back to listen again, because I was kind of like I was doing something else while I was listening to it, and I wasn't like, listening super closely. So it's possible that, I didn't appreciate it. But like, I think as the album went on, I liked the songs at the end of the album better than the songs at the beginning. So like that last 3 from when it goes Writing on the Walls and those ones that followed it, I thought that, which is Everyone Looks So Good From Here and To Whom It May Concern. Okay. I don't know if that was just like in my head. I was like, okay, Writing on the Walls, I remember I liked that song. That song happened, and now, I like these songs more because I'm associating with the song I just heard that I liked, or what it was. But yeah, it just at least this album, which I wasn't as familiar with this one as I was with the other one. Yeah, I did not enjoy it as much as I expected to on a re-listen.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to be a hater or do a sneak diss or anything, Jared, but like from my perspective, I guess maybe one of the reasons why Travis and I like it is just from like a musical perspective, it's way more complex. Like those riffs are awesome. And, he used the word iconic. Like the drumming in this album to me is like insane. Like before it was like, hey, the drummer sings, right? And I honestly didn't really notice the drums too much. I'm not a drummer, but I can notice good drumming. And so the previous album was like, oh yeah, he's playing these tracks pretty well, and singing. It's really cool. And, some of these songs, I mean, it is very like non-standard. It's very like rhythmic. Like, it's not like chorus verse chorus. It's like, riff, halftime breakdown, like riff, different type of riff. And so like that keeps it really interesting. And for people, I think, who listen to a lot of metal, that's what they're expecting, right? But for people who are like, hey, I kind of want like a heavy pop song, right? That's kind of what was the previous album.
That's probably me, right? I'm the unwashed masses that can't appreciate, the intricacies of it. But yeah, I mean, I was, like I said, there were things that I liked about it, but just like in general, I was like, oh, this is not what I expected. This isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this was kind of the change in their maturity for the music, I think.
Oh, it was very obvious to me that it was a change when I listened to them back to back. I was like, oh, there's definitely something different going on here.
Yeah, that's why actually when you said that when we had picked these two albums, I was actually really excited because it was like right at the pinnacle of their career, I feel like. And actually, like, this album is like a great predecessor to the next one. I know that we're not talking about it, but Lost in the Sound of Separation is actually my favorite album of theirs, which is kind of like Define the Great Line, but times two, I feel like. It's almost like if you start at They're Only Chasing Safety and you just move up, it's almost like an artist who has like dementia or something. Like it just gets a little messier and a little messier, and you can still see the art inside, but it's just kind of like, that's weird. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Lost in the Sound of Separation, it took me a while to like it because my friend Steve loved it, and I was like, I don't know, but the more and more I listened to it, like all the songs on the album were that song on like your CD when you're a kid that you skip, and then one time you're not able to skip it, so you listen to it and you're like, this is actually a banger. Like that was the whole album for me.
Yeah, that's actually how I started with Define the Great Line, unfortunately. That like my context is like, this is going to be like a very listenable album, like front to back. And I listened to it almost exactly how you described, where I listened to Writing on the Wall first, and then In Regards to Myself. And then I was like, okay, the rest of it all kind of sounds the same. But then, I listened to it, and then actually one of the underrated tracks, I think, was Moving for the Sake of Motion. I think that song is awesome, and the way it starts out with the drums, it just punches you in the face. And then then I listened to that for the same reason that you did, where it's like, I'm too lazy to go over there and change the E play. I'm just going to listen to it through. And I was like, wow, okay, that was like,
I'm gonna give it another listen tonight. I'm gonna give it another go and see if it changes. But I mean, so. Travis, you said you are somewhat familiar with their newer stuff.
Yes. So I kind of fell off when I think it was Disambiguation when they got the dude with the mustache drumming. And I'm never really a hater like that. I just loved Aaron so much that I was like, I'm not even gonna.
So the album that Travis is talking about is Underoath is like they're when they're stylized, their O is like, it has like a slash through it, which I think is some Nordic letter or something. So they released an album after Aaron Gillespie left that was just that O, and then I think it's called, in parentheses, Disambiguation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't listen to that album, but I did listen to their 2018 album, which is called let me see if I can find it. It's called Erase Me. And that's the one where they started swearing in their songs. There's the F word in one of the songs. So it's called On My Teeth. I listened to it. I actually was like, I'm going to give this a go just to listen to it. I liked it better than some of the songs on Define the Great Line.
Yeah.
So I listened to Rapture and On My Teeth, and I think I liked both of those pretty. Like, they weren't my favorite or anything. And I don't know that the addition of swearing added anything to the music other than shock value. It wasn't like when I read the lyrics, I wasn't like, oh, okay, this was like, added something to it. I was like, you could have just used a different word. You don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like you said, it's just shock value.
Throw off. Yeah, I think they kind of did it just kind of like to like really like, all right, we're not a Christian band anymore. Yeah. Some of us are. I think Aaron Gillespie is still a Christian. I don't know if Spencer Chamberlain is, from some of the things I've read.
Yeah.
From him. If anything, he seems like he's off of church and like religion, but I don't know if he's still a Christian. I believe Aaron Gillespie still is.
Okay.
Which I don't think I don't think he's the one that sings the F word, but maybe he is. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, concerning that, like, it kind of sucks growing up in a way, because if I was a teenager, like, I would have been mortified. I probably would have written him off along with everyone in my church and everything. But it's just kind of like this thing where you can kind of be realistic, and like myself, I was just kind of like, I've sworn sometimes, like, people don't hate me. And the thing is, like, I mean, at the same time, it kind of comes with the territory. If you're going to be famous, people are going to do that to you. But
under a microscope.
Yeah, the thing that didn't make sense to me. So earlier, before we started recording, I mentioned the Bad Christian podcast. Am I allowed to mention other podcasts on here?
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, so
give us a shout out.
Some of the hosts, because there's 3 hosts. I haven't listened in a while, but 2 of them were
I've never listened
to Emery, which Emery is actually another band I love. I could talk about it.
Hey, we can have you back to do an Emery episode too.
That would be sick, actually. So they had the keyboardist from Underoath as a guest one day, and basically he was the first one to leave. And I don't know why, it's funny to me, but every time there's a hardcore band that breaks up, it starts with the keyboardist every time, and I don't know why. But like for real, if you look it up, like band breakups, it starts with the keyboardist every time. It happened in Attack. Technically, he didn't leave; he just became the vocalist. But it happened in Underoath, Prada, like so many bands. Once they start changing around members, that's what it starts with. But anyway, his reasoning was that none of them were on the same page religiously, and so they were breaking up, basically. And then once I found out that they were getting back together and they were doing a tour, and then they were releasing an album, and then they were swearing and stuff like that, my first judgmental reaction was like, that's so fake to me. Like, why are you going to tell everybody that you're not on the same page religiously, and then you're just going to get back together? To me, that just sounds like you're getting back together for the fame and for the money. And obviously, I mean, because you love doing it, nobody's going to play music for money and hate it. But as I kind of processed it more and everything, I was just kind of like, you know what? Like, maybe it's also growth and maturity and love that brought them back together, because they can kind of be together in harmony. And in one hand, it's kind of like there are guys who are solid in their faith, and if they really believe, what they say they believe, then you kind of got to get in with people, whether you think they're perfect or not, in order to lead them to, the glory that you believe in. So I'm not trying to make it sound like I don't believe in it. I'm just trying not to get like, I don't know. I'm trying to be PC, I guess. I don't want to get you guys canceled.
Yeah, no, it's probably hard, right? And I think that just like from their perspective, I can understand how you'd feel hypocritical, like having a really tough, road experience. You're around all kinds of stuff, like, you're not actively, like, it's always hard to be the odd one out on Warped Tour all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, like I could imagine that's pretty hard, and it probably, I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth, but I just feel like that creates a situation where, like, if you feel like you can't be real and you always have to be like doing above and beyond the right things because some youth pastor is going to burn your CD in a grand gesture, like on top of the Harry Potter books, you kind of like, you're used to walking on eggshells, and like that, when it's all about art and when it's about, you're trying to make music that's like really intensely personal and, explores a lot of interesting and dark themes. I think that, it puts you in an awkward bind. And I think for some people, they just say, you know what, forget this, I'm done. like I'm tired of feeling hypocritical. It's over. I'm just not going to do it anymore. Some people, I guess, go from like, very black and white, like, never do this or never say this to, well, is that the point? Right. I'm not saying that's like anyone's beliefs or whatever. It's just like, there's a lot of factors, and we have 5-6 different people plus a tour, plus your friends and a non-normal life, it's all those things really combined, and it makes for interesting art, and it makes for like interesting music. But for at the human level, it's really, really hard because they, they're not getting rich necessarily, right? They can survive and make a good living, but they're not going to be Taylor Swift and, have millions of dollars in paparazzi.
Flying everywhere on their private jets.
Exactly. Right. So it's like, I think that there's a lot of combinations, and when you're with people where you feel like you're not on the same page in that regards, I feel like that would be really tough. And like I said, a lot of these bands that you hear from, they're making basically, about what they would if they were teaching, you know what I mean? Like just starting out, and so for us, it may be like the dream, but for them, it's like, man, I still have bills, and we need to, like, I want to buy a house, and I'm away from my spouse, and I have kids, and it's just a tough life. So I can understand why, I guess, there's tensions there, especially being a band for, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it's tough. Things change.
Yeah, I could see that definitely.
So, before we start to wrap things up and give our ratings for things and stuff, Travis, did you ever have an Underoath shirt?
Yes.
Do you remember what it looked like?
Yeah, it was brown, and I think it was Define the Great Line. Yeah, I think it really just said Define the Great Line on the top.
Okay, because I had an Underoath shirt, which I think I gave to Mike. Do you have that one?
It's now in my drawer. Yeah.
Nice. So it didn't fit me anymore, and I was like, Mike, if you want it, it's all yours. I think it's brown, and it says like Underoath up kind of like on like the pec area, and it has like a blue background on it. And I remember I always thought it was so cool, and I'd wear it to school.
I think there were 2 iconic Underoath shirts. One that we talked about already, which is Where America Goes to Die, with a picture of Florida. It was yellow. It was really cool. That one was very edgy, but technically youth group acceptable because, it's Underoath and they're Christian, and, it's not explicitly calling for the killing of someone. It just referencing dying, which is cool.
Old people go.
Right. And so the second one, I remember the more iconic one that was, you would always see people at shows wearing this one, but it was the black and pink shirt that was like, I don't know if it was supposed to be like a
cross on it.
It was like splattered.
It was like a splatter.
Spray paint. Yeah, it was like a pink cross that was like spray painted, and it was dripping.
Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be like marionette strings or something like that. Like, how there's a cross.
Maybe it was more of an X than a cross, but yeah.
I totally
that one was iconic.
Black was like a staple back in the day.
It was. Yeah, it was amazing. But Underoath, again, they were a huge part of it. I feel like they set the standard. So so final thoughts on Underoath, Travis. I guess anything that you think people who listen to Underoath should know about them before we dive deep into this, or any connections with youth group things from the 90s and 2000s?
Nothing really comes to mind. I will say they ended up re-recording their Act of Depression and Cries of the Past, or remastering 10 years ago. That was really good. And then they have live recordings of the 2 albums that we've talked about, plus Lost in the Sound of Separation, my favorite. They have full-length live recorded albums of those on Spotify that are just straight through. And they're pretty awesome, actually. So, I mean, if people don't listen to them already, I hope that they give it a chance, because it's literally like the birthplace of screamo, in my opinion.
So, like, on a scale of 1 to 5, drummers singing, what would you rank? What would you rank them on a scale of 1 to 5?
Oh, Aaron's a 5 for sure. Because I mean, especially
sorry. That's
Five being the best?
I just, instead of doing stars, I just make up a random related thing out of 5 every time. But you could talk about Aaron Gillespie if you want to.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying name the top 5, or
No. What I'm saying is, on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, rate them. But instead of saying stars,
okay, yeah, I'd say 5 stars for sure. Because
5 stars.
Yeah, 100%. If anything, I'd give it a 4.8 because I'll take one for that ridiculous mustache that drummer had, and the other one for the F word, because that's just judgmental. Though, other than that, I'd really consider him a 5.
Highly recommend. Then,
yeah,
Mike, what about you?
I think they're a great band. I think that, they didn't really hold my interest, unfortunately, like past some of those albums. And it's really hard to see bands get there. Like there's some bands that made 2 or 3 really good albums and then it's done, right? The Wedding, great.
Yeah.
Like I can listen to their whole discography and feel great about it.
We love them, and then they're just like, look, we put out 2 albums and now we're gone.
Yeah, right. So like, I don't have to worry about, like there's so much there when you say you're an Underoath fan. I feel like there's a lot of qualification. Like, are you like an OG Underoath fan, or are you like which album do you like best? And people like them for different reasons, and I get that. It's okay. It's just hard for me to like go wholesale and say like I'm an Underoath fan, like 5 out of 5, because to me that's like I have to like stand behind some of the stinkers, not that like there's a lot of stinkers, but the stuff that's really good is amazing. The albums that we talked about, I think those are, 2 genre defining albums really. And I think that those are perfect 5s as far as albums go. As a band, as a whole, I don't think it was always as consistent as that. So I'm going to give them a 4 only because like, out of 10 albums I see on Spotify, I see 4 that are amazing. I see 2 that I've listened to and didn't have strong feelings about. Yeah. And then I see like 3 that I was like, if someone found them and listened to them and that was their introduction to them, maybe good, but I can't like love it. And so for that reason, 4 out of 5, 4 singing drummers out of 5.
Understandable.
All right. And for me, I think, my review is a little bit mixed, right? Because on one hand, I really love They're Only Chasing Safety. That album, that's a 5, no questions asked. I love that album. I think it's great. If you are someone that is really that is interested in like screamo or like really like hardcore music, and you're a Christian and you haven't listened to Underoath, I definitely think you should check them out. If you're not and you're listening to this podcast, cool. Thanks for listening. But their other album for like Define the Great Line, like I said, I did not enjoy it like I remembered, like I thought I was going to. I thought I was like, this is a slam dunk. I'm going to love both these albums. There were parts of it that I liked. I maybe didn't appreciate the intricacies like you guys did. So like for me, that one is probably, more like a 3, 2.5, 3 for me, because there were parts I really do like. Writing on the Walls, I like that song a lot. But it's one song on an entire album. And then for their new stuff, I expected to not like it, and I liked it more than I thought I would, which to me was interesting. So I usually generally rate it as like what I think of it in relation to youth group and what I think of it in relation to like the rest of pop culture. I think in terms of like youth group culture stuff, if you're into hardcore stuff, Underoath's a 5, no doubt, hands down, easily. Even if you didn't, even though I really liked the one album and didn't like the other one as much, I still think that that's like I said, every single song on that album I thought was great. It was, the hits keep coming, right? And then I guess in relation to like the rest of pop culture, just thinking about like the rest of their discography and some of those other things, I think for me it's probably like a 3.5. I like them still. I'll go back to their old music. I don't know that I'll seek out their new music. I think to me, I think it's just that I really like what Aaron Gillespie brings to the band, right? Because I really like the albums that he's on, and then as soon as he leaves the band, and that album you mentioned, Disambiguation, right?
Yeah.
I stopped listening when Aaron Gillespie left the band. I was like, well, I really liked the sound that he brought to the band, and when he was gone, I was like, I think I'm out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think I stand on that. And I was really glad I got to listen to the Almost and rediscover that. So I might continue to give them a listen.
Awesome.
So at this
That's good
point,
stuff.
Travis,
Nice review, Jared. So
go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to do the segment that you're going to do where we give Travis an opportunity to plug social media or any projects or anything interesting like that, right?
Yeah. Anything you want to plug, whether it's related to something you're doing or just something you like, here's your chance. Give it a shout out.
Alrighty. If you ever want to hit me up on the Xbox, I play 1 day a week with Jared, and you can look me up. It's Mega T Jelly, and I'll probably ignore you. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's also Mega T Jelly. Instagram is really the only thing that I'm like comfortable giving out because Facebook I don't really post, but Instagram.
What about your TikTok?
Yeah. Hold on, let me look at the name for that. Because Mega T Jelly was taken. There's somebody taking my name. This started within the last couple of years. So on PlayStation Network, somebody has the name Mega T Jelly, but it's followed by the word girl. So there's some woman terrorizing my life. But yeah, so if you go on TikTok, it's that's got my last name in it. You know what? If you hit me up on Instagram, I'll give you my TikTok.
Okay. I was like, we don't say last names but if you want to, you're allowed to give out your own information. We just didn't want to give it out for you. It's up to you. Dude.
Yeah, you know what? You could whenever you plug this episode into Instagram, you could put it on there, but I'll text it to you, Jared. I kind of don't want it on here after you said that someone in like other countries was listening to it. But before I get off here, I actually wrote a song for this podcast.
Oh man, we got a big surprise.
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Oh, no! Gosh, are you serious right now? Oh my gosh!
I only did that because Jared used to say that I was that guy that would ruin parties with acoustic guitars.
Yeah,
I used to be the Wonderwall guy. So
that's hilarious. Yeah.
No,
that's okay. Yeah, I had my time as a Wonderwall man as well, so yeah. I get it. It's all good. We have a lot in common, more than we probably realize. It's funny.
But I do want to say before I go, before you say your piece, I just want to say I really do appreciate coming on here because I'm in the Army now, and most of the dudes my rank are like 20 years old, and they make me feel like a grandpa. So if I was to bring up Underoath to one of them, they would have been like, "My dad."
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. But, so I do appreciate the opportunity, and it's just been fun catching up and talking to you guys.
Yeah, I do know someone who named their firstborn Emery because of the band Emery. So
no way.
That's kind of now we're getting really old, but
it's actually
not really old. But yeah, it is a good name. So just want to throw that out there for anyone. But anyways, if you have more questions or you're interested in learning more episodes about Christian emo, youth group culture, things like that, we've got a lot of cool episodes planned coming up, a lot of fun stuff happening in our world. But if you do have special requests for episodes, you want to hear more like this or have a specific topic you want us to cover, you can send us an email, youthgroupreuniontour@gmail.com. We can read it if you want us to. If you don't want us to read it, we won't read it, but we will actually open it and take your feedback into consideration, whether it's good or bad. Second thing that you can do to interact with us is go to our Twitter, so twitter.com/YG Reunion Tour, on Instagram @Youth Group Reunion Tour, or if you want to join all of our other sites like our Yat page, our Reddit account, things like that, it's y.at/cool church raise hands guitar. That's a 4 emoji domain. I think it's pretty cool. The kids tell me that it is bussin' to have an emoji domain. So go ahead and check that out and see if you want to join all of our other social medias. And so I'm going to do this right this time. This is a running gag that I can't do this correctly. So I'm just going to do this one solo. But until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.
Check this out.